What's up, everybody? It's Izzy, and in this video I want to talk about what work capacity is, how it relates to what we're trying to do in powerlifting, why it's important, and all things of that nature. So work capacity really is, as the name implies, it's the amount of work that you can do and still get positive adaptations. Now, this is typically a term used in endurance training circles, but it matters in powerlifting as well. So there's a number of ways that you can talk about this, right? One is your work capacity in, just in general, like the amount of training that you can do in a training cycle and still recover. Now, this is a very important aspect, of course, because all of us should know that over time, you have to do more and more work to continue getting more and more results. This is just a fact. Now, of course, there's many things that we can do in terms of proper exercise selection, the manipulation of frequency, intensity, and volume to get a better training result with the same amount of volume. But again, in time, over time, throughout the years, your training volume has to trend up. You have to do more to do more. And if you're not stressing your work capacity by, at certain points of your training, trying to do more, it will not improve. That's just a fact. If you're always doing the same workouts over and over again, you're running the same training cycle with the same amount of volume every single week, your work capacity will not improve. So to improve your work capacity in the general sense, you need to occasionally challenge it. And the way that you do this is by flirting with training volumes, at least in, let's say you're doing an accumulation phase of 4 to 6 weeks. In that 4th, 5th, or 6th week, you want to start pushing towards your current ability, your current work capacity level. You want to push towards and maybe even a little bit beyond and possibly overreach a little bit before a deload in order to provide a stimulus that will create better work capacity. Just like any other physical quality, work capacity only improves when it is stressed. So if you want to do more volume over time, you have to do more volume over time. I know that sounds trite, but it's the truth. To get better work capacity, you have to do more work. Now, probably the more common way that people talk about work capacity, instead of talking about your overall ability to recover from training, because most people call that, MRV, or maximal recoverable volume. But the way that most people talk about work capacity in powerlifting has to do with your ability to withstand workloads in a given training session. So let's talk about why this is important. Well, here's the thing. A lot of programs that you start out with when you're new to lifting are minimalistic in nature. You're only doing a couple sets. Maybe not even all of them will be hard. Like a typical novice program might have you do a 3x5, right? And it's 10-minute rests between sets or something like that. Well, as you become an advanced lifter, this isn't feasible for a whole variety of reasons. Number one is that you need way more volume than that, right? And if you've gotten used to the situation where you're taking these incredibly long rest periods, your work capacity in that sense, in terms of recovering between sets, won't have been challenged very much. And you won't be able to recover more quickly when you start trying to do that, at least at first, right? Because your work capacity needs to improve. So you get this situation where when you become an intermediate and advanced lifter, and now instead of needing 3 sets or 4 sets or 5 sets, you start having workouts where there's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 working sets. And you can't use the same strategy of resting 10 minutes between sets anymore, because maybe you have 4 or 5 exercises to do that day, right? So if you rested 10 minutes between sets, you'd be at the gym for 4 or 5 hours. Not only is that impossible for most people from a logistical point of view, they have other things to do in their life, but from an optimal point of view, just most people cannot sustain training focus for 5 straight hours, and you need to eat a meal and things like that, right? So at some point you have to, by necessity in terms of logistics, start training with lower rest periods in order to get in all of the volume that you need to optimally progress as an intermediate and advanced lifter. And what this requires is that you rest less between sets. So it's very, very typical for someone coming off of a novice program or say a more maximal training approach where they've been over resting. They've been resting 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes between sets, and they get into a program like, say, a daily undulating periodization program that calls for 4 sets of 8 or 5 sets of 8 or 6 sets of 8 at 70%. And, you know, they'll do set 1 and it's RPE 6. And then they'll do set 2 and it's RPE 8. Then they'll do set 3 and it's practically RPE 10. And then maybe by the 4th set, they can't even get all 8 reps anymore. Whereas somebody with better work capacity, the RPE might not even increase from set to set. They might be able to get all 4 sets with no RPE increase. Or somebody with even just slightly better work capacity might at least be able to finish the prescription without hitting RPE 10. So you can see that also, instead of just talking about work capacity in the general sense, the work that you can recover from in a training cycle, we're also talking about your ability to withstand work within a training session. And again, this is important from that logistical perspective, but it's also important because if you need a certain amount of volume, and the only way you can get that volume in is to keep reducing the weight, because you know you'll fail if you keep the weight at the same level, you start to get a worse hypertrophic stimulus as well as a worse strength stimulus. So think about it. If you can only do 2 or 3 sets before you have to reduce the weight because the RPE gets too high, when you reduce the weight, you're reducing the amount of mechanical tension, so you'll get a worse hypertrophy stimulus. You're using less weight, there's less tonnage, less hypertrophy. Simple math on that one. But it's also going to be worse for your strength gains because you're going to be working at a lower percentage of 1RM, which will not have quite as powerful effects neurologically and in terms of efficiency and all of these things. So not only is it important to challenge your ability overall to recover from training in general so that you can recover from more and more training in the context of a training cycle, but within an actual given training sessions, you need to be somewhat in shape so that you can get through these really difficult workouts without having to decrease the load too much or without taking prohibitively long rest periods. So of course, this asks the final question: how do you improve work capacity? And you need to, the first thing they should do is stop over resting. Okay, start slowly reducing your rest periods until you're in a more reasonable range. Most of you do not need to be resting more than 2 to 5 minutes. For example, Mike Teixeira of Reactive Training Systems will often get through 7, 8, 9 sets of 5 at 70 to 75% with 2-minute rests. I'm not saying you necessarily need to have work capacity that's that great, but you need to work on it and you need to improve it. Get your rest periods to a more manageable level. And beyond that, a lot of powerlifters are just allergic to cardio. And if you're any one of my clients can tell you that I often have people do cardio once or twice a week. It'll be in the form of HIIT training or even sometimes LISS. And again, if you're out of shape, these things can help. It can help you get through these high volume sessions without prohibitively long rest periods, or even beyond that, it'll help you finish your prescriptions without the RPEs getting too high and thus making it more difficult to recover from the workout in general. Anyways, guys, that is the primer on work capacity. In the general sense, it's the amount of work that you can do and still get a positive effect. But more often than not, the way that people use it when they talk about powerlifting is your ability within training sessions to sustain work. And this aspect is incredibly important as well. Make sure you're developing it. Do not neglect it, because when you get to that intermediate and advanced stage and you need to do all of this work, you won't be able to get away with this 10-minute rest period bullshit. And even if you try it, the RPEs might increase so rapidly that you're not able to finish your prescribed work either. So develop your work capacity, get in shape, and I promise you, you will get better results for powerlifting. As always, my friends, have a nice day and good luck with your training. Peace.